What about coffee and alcohol when you have liver qi stagnation? Are they good things? Why do people use them? Hi, I'm Marie Hopkinson, and this is the Chinese Medicine Podcast, the place where you can come to get information about Chinese medicine and help you learn about how you can help yourself on your Chinese medicine health journey. Let's talk about coffee and alcohol when people have liver qi stagnation. If you're not sure about what that is, liver qi stagnation or wood element stagnation, then click on the link in the description below and you'll be taken to that video and kind of read up on that first, listen up on that first. This is a really common question I get as a practitioner. Okay, patients say, can I keep having coffee? Can I keep having alcohol? So these are two things in Chinese medicine where certain quantities of stuff can have a different effect to larger quantities of stuff. That's one thing to consider. Okay, so certain quantities of alcohol have a different effect on our body to certain quantities, like larger quantities of alcohol, and the same with coffee. And I'm not saying that these two things are the same, because they're totally not the same, but we will be talking about them in together, because they are often used when you have people who have liver qi stagnation or wood element stagnation. They are often used to, mitigate those the symptoms, because they do alleviate some of the symptoms that people have. So let's talk about coffee first. So coffee comes from a bean, which means it's going to have a purgative effect on our body, and it's going to be cold. Now, the coffee bean itself is also roasted, and so that roasting process warms it, and it makes it then when you grind it up, coffee has an incredible aroma, right? So that aromatic nature means it's quite pungent. So it has a dual effect. It has two effects in our body. And what we find is when people have one coffee a day, it has more of a pungent effect on the body. Whereas when they have more than one coffee a day, it'll have a lot more of a purgative, that downward draining purgative cold effect on the body. So what are those effects? The pungent effect is good for people with liver qi stagnation, because what it does is it moves things up. And so that's why when you first wake up in the morning, if you've got liver qi stagnation and you don't feel good, right? Because you feel like sluggish, hard to get going, that's just a part of qi stagnation, right? So especially if you're, sighing and, another day, like I'm not happy. Okay, as soon as you had your coffee, you're like, yep, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to face the world now. And so that's because of that pungent effect, and it helps kind of aromatically move, and so most people who have one coffee can experience that effect. Now, some people are very sensitive to coffee and caffeine, and so when they have even one coffee, it's not just pungent for them, but they feel incredibly wired, and they might even have like shaking, and they just they're so busy, and so it affects their heart. They might have heart palpitations, or their heart might race, or something like that. So again, with all my videos, this is not a replacement for your professional diagnosis and your professional treatment by a practitioner. So if you've got a health problem, you've got a symptom, go and see your GP or your doctor or your health professional practitioner, Chinese medicine, acupuncturist, whoever you see normally, and make sure you go and get those symptoms checked out, right? And all of this advice is not a one-size-fits-all. We're all different, okay? Especially Chinese medicine considers that. And so constitutionally, some people have a very robust constitution, some people have a much weaker or a more sensitive constitution. And so they may feel the effects of what I'm saying, like by the majority of people feel good from one coffee, some people feel a huge detriment from one coffee. They're very affected by that bitter purgative nature, and they basically get the runs and have to go to the toilet straight away from one coffee. So why does that happen? And that's the bitter purgative nature of coffee. Because it's a bean, beans have a downward draining purgative effect. And what that can have is the more purgative you take in, the more it increases that peristalsis. And sometimes that can be like causing you cramps in your digestive system. That can be quite annoying, quite violent. You can feel like a lot of pain in your digestive system from that. So that's not a comfortable thing to happen. So coffee can often cause that to be the case. So coffee has that pungent aromatic function, and then it also has that downward draining bitter kind of function. So generally for most people with liver qi stagnation, one coffee, maybe two, they cannot be too affected by that that bitter purgative aspect. But if you have too many coffees, so what can happen is because you're still on 2 or 3 coffees, or maybe more than that, like people who have a lot of caffeine and a lot of coffee, they still do get that burst of that pungent effect. But what's happening is you're building up like a culmination of that bitter, and so then next thing you know, you're having like effects on your bowels. So if someone's got diarrhea, like that means loose stools, your bowels aren't properly formed, then and you have a lot of coffee, the first thing I'd do is stop having so much coffee. See if that stops your bowels from being so loose. I mean, if you're having a lot of coffee and the coffee's got a lot of milk in it, then that can also be affecting you as well. So if you're having a lot of like lattes or flat whites, and there's a huge amount of milk and a small amount of espresso, that's different to just pure espresso or black coffee. So and that can be dampening, and that can like have a dampening sort of purging effect on your digestive system and your gut as well. So we're talking about liver qi stagnation, people that have that like, why do people love coffee when they have liver qi stagnation? Is because it moves liver qi. That's the first thing that it does. That pungent aromatic function of the first cup of coffee you have has mostly that, you haven't built up a culmination of that bitter purging of it. So you can kind of reap that benefit, and then that may be enough to kind of move your bowels. Sometimes people who have liver qi stagnation tend to have a constipation going on. If you just purely have stagnation, often their stools will be like pebbly, and so if they have 1 coffee a day, the stools maybe just become normal. So if they don't have their coffee a day, then they it's really hard for me to go if I don't have a coffee, right? So everything we do to our bodies affects the constitution that we are as well. So if you stop doing something, then things may change, your symptoms may change, and that pattern of disharmony may go away. Sometimes people just refuse to change, or they don't want to change what they eat or their lifestyle, because it's just that's who they are, and that's how they want to live. So let's get to alcohol. So what does alcohol do? Now, alcohol's a pungent, and it's also hot. It's different to coffee. It's not cold and purgative. What alcohol does is it takes the yang of your body, the warmness of your body, and it kind of floats it out to the surface. So you feel warm. You feel like, and our bodies are warm, so we like to feel warm. Our bodies dislike cold. We don't want to be feeling cold. Like, we don't want to feel so hot and bothered, too much heat makes people feel flustered and bothered. But in general, we like to feel warm, which is why if someone gets drunk, they often don't even feel the cold, because that they've basically taken that yang. And this is the difference in Chinese medicine to other systems of medicine, is that you've ingested a substance, which is the alcohol, but in Chinese medicine we think the effects that has is not just the substance, but the effects is actually your body, like the substance is having an effect on your body at your body's own detriment, right? So yeah, in a Western sense, you could think of it like, well, when you drink the alcohol, your body has to work harder, and so it works the liver and the kidneys, the physical organs, harder to be able to metabolize, the aspects of alcohol. And that can be, then you're basically, the body's working so hard to kind of do that, and that's depleting it. That's one way of thinking of it. In the Chinese medicine way, we're thinking the alcohol takes your body's yang and pushes it out to the surface. Now, you don't want all your yang on the surface of your body. You want your yang like rooted, which means like deeply stored and in one place. You don't want it sort of like scattered and like wasted on the surface of your body. So that's what alcohol does. Now, why do people with liver qi stagnation or wood element stagnation feel good from alcohol? Because let's say same as with coffee, like 1 drink of alcohol has a different effect to multiple drinks of alcohol, and a much more greater effect than something like coffee, because the difference with alcohol is it affects your mind, your shen. So that's the drunkenness effect that you have. Now, it depends on your constitution and the frequency in which you drink alcohol, but some people don't, and also the frequency at which you ingest it. So if you get 1 standard drink and you just smack it back, you're probably going to get that drunken effect very quickly. Like, that's just going to come on, like that, you will get that drunken effect. Whereas if you sip on that drink, let's say you drunk that over an hour or something, then you may not even get that drunken effect at all. You may just get a slight bit of that warm, pungent, moving effect, and so it may have some sort of effect. Or if you have a very small amount of alcohol. Now, alcohol is used in Chinese medicine, in herbal medicine, to actually metabolize or help your body take the herbs to particular aspects of your body. Now, when you're having that alcohol for that purpose, you shouldn't be getting drunk from that alcohol. It's not like a standard drink's worth of alcohol. It's enough to kind of dissolve the herbs in there, and that's very variable depending on what formula and how it's used. But what we're saying is we can know the effects of alcohol, how it's used in a medicinal way, I guess, by looking at how it's used in Chinese herbal medicine. Now, there are some people that, through abuse of alcohol, can't tolerate alcohol. So this video isn't to sort of say, well, you need to have coffee, you need to have alcohol if you've got liver cheese stagnation. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is I'm trying to explain what these things do, so people who use them, or who are thinking about using them, or who are thinking about, should I give that up, should I quit that, what's that doing to my body, is it useful to me, is it something that I need to keep. Now, there are some people that can't, they can't, I think this is probably true with coffee as well, although people just don't tend to admit it, or it's more socially acceptable. Because you're addicted to that substance, it's harder to give it up. And so if you have one drink, you have one coffee, you have one drink of alcohol, then people can't stop, and they tend to have too much. Now, if that's you, I just encourage you not to have it at all. I don't think there's any reason to subject your body, like there's no medicinal benefit in it that you couldn't get from some other purpose. So if you're an alcoholic, let's say, and I wouldn't be, there's no reason. Let's say you're an alcoholic and you've got liver cheese stagnation, there's no reason to start drinking alcohol for a medicinal use. I just say stay away from it. But if you are someone who's a moderate drinker or an occasional drinker, then I guess the other aspect of me mentioning this is because I think this is how a lot of people get down that path, is because they have the qi stagnation. They're looking for a way to move that qi. So what alcohol does is, by raising that yang to the surface and making you feel warm, it's very similar to exercise, but not with the same beneficial effects to your body. But in a moving qi stagnation sense, it can be similar to exercise, because you feel that warmth and that movement in your body. And alcohol can often take away pain because it's warming the channels, and that's where the pain might be. So if you've got pain, in your back, you've got pain in your neck or something like that, then some people use alcohol as a pain reliever because of that movement. And that's certainly how it was used, or how it is used in herbal medicine, often with like a little bit of like sake or rice wine was mixed up, or is mixed up with the herbs, and that facilitates those herbs to get to the channels where the pain is, right? So I can understand how people start to use it. But then what happens is, let's say you have one glass of wine, and you sit that over half an hour or an hour or something like that, and you don't have that drunken effect, but you just have that movement, and then you can stop there, then that may be useful in some way for liver qi stagnation. Is it better than going to the gym? I don't think so. Like, is it better, like, or going for a walk, or doing some moderate exercise? Probably not. But it depends on, the person's temperament. So that can happen with alcohol. Now, the other aspects of alcohol, it doesn't happen with caffeine. So what happens with caffeine and coffee is it kind of sharpens your mind, and that can make you a bit more agitated. So both of these drugs have an effect on our shen, our mental aspects, our mental function. But what alcohol does is it kind of like, well, it dulls that shen, it dulls that ability to have your that cognitive recall, right? Whereas coffee would kind of do the opposite to that. So sometimes people get into this habit. I've seen this in people that are very busy people. They have a lot of coffee to kind of rev them up in the day, but then they're so revved up that they need alcohol at night to kind of relax them, and so that they can relax. And that would be you'd start by trying to reduce the coffee, not increase the alcohol to help your relaxation. Find some other things that can kind of help move that stagnation. So if you have more alcohol or you have the alcohol in a frequency or in an amount of time that gives you that drunkenness effect, then what happens then is you're affecting your Shen, which is more detrimental to your body in terms of, like, in a TCM sense, they think it's wasting your Jing. In a classical Chinese medicine sense, we think it's using up more yang than you would have just, so you're basically just consuming your life force, you're consuming your resource, your body. So it's not there's no functional benefit to being drunk in Chinese medicine. But there is a benefit to using alcohol to kind of get to the channels and warm the channels and things like that. But please, I would say, like, the dangers of alcohol for people, it's very hard. It's very hard for people to not have to only have one drink, especially in our society. I'm in Australia, and drinking is a big part of our culture, and it's just common for people to come home at night and just have a drink, and that's what they do. And so that happens, it comes as a habit. But why I'm mentioning it in this video is because a lot of people who have that habit have liver qi stagnation. So if they were aware of that qi stagnation, or they sorted that qi stagnation out in another way, be it by acupuncture or herbs or exercise or lifestyle stuff, diet stuff, they didn't have that stagnation, they may not feel so much of a craving or a need to kind of just come home and have a drink to relax. So when you have a lot of stagnation of liver qi, often it causes anger and frustration, right? And so it causes, like, basically your liver qi should be flowing in all four directions. That wood element should be moving. Now when it's not, it's constrained, and that constraint can then make heat. That heat can kind of rise up, and sometimes people can get angry.
Serenity now!
Now what that heat is actually your body's yang, and that person's getting angry, and it's consuming more yang than...
You're gonna die, clown!
It's basically that weak yang of their body kind of floating upwards, and it's wasting their life force, having these outbursts of anger. And so in a way, people head for alcohol to kind of moderate or facilitate a bit of that free flow. But if they've already got that stagnation building up to the point where there's this heat happening from it, then that it means that weak yang's already floating upwards, and then you put alcohol on top, which then pushes that even more. And so then they get violent, they get angry, they get, it can get worse, and it encourages then people to lose control, and so then they can drink more and more because they've lost control. Like, part of your Shen, your mental functions, is to have that control. And so if you don't have control, then you can easily just drink way too much, and then that can be much more detriment to you. And then you get into this cycle, then you wake up, you feel hungover, you feel foggy-headed, that's like you've got a lot of dampness. And look, different alcohols have different effects on the body as well. Like beer is a lot more dampening, spirits are a lot more heating, so there's different alcohols have different effects in a Chinese medicine sense on our body as well. So depending on the person's constitution, depends on how those things can make you more sort of worse, or exacerbate certain symptoms, in terms of, like, as you metabolize those products. If you already have dampness, for instance, you probably feel a lot worse having beer, versus if you already have dampness and then you had, like, spirits, you probably wouldn't feel as bad in your digestive system. However, spirits are a lot hotter, so if you have that floating yang, it's just going to make that even worse, and that person can lose control more easily, or get more angry more easily, or violent, and things like that. I'm just trying to show you the Chinese medicine perspective on some of these things. So today we've just talked about coffee and alcohol. This is part of the series about liver qi or wood element stagnation. So there's a couple of other videos in the series. If you haven't watched them before, I've got one for entrepreneurs and how the wood element can help or hinder you in your creativity. I've got one about just general what is liver qi stagnation. We've got things about the things you can do, the singing, laughing, exercise, those things really sort of more explained in a lot more detail. So if you're not a subscriber already, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching. You're watching the Chinese Medicine Podcast, and if you've got a question, something you want to share, put the comment in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.